an EC2, I want to go to the EC2 instances. I could find EC2 whether from the search here, or when I go to all services, I can select compute, and from the compute, I can select EC2. To launch an EC2, click on Launch Instances. I'm going to select the first option here, which is Amazon Linux 2 AMI. So this is the quick start, which are the pre-configured operating system by AWS. This is my AMI. If I would create an AMI, it will appear here. The AWS Marketplace contains a third-party AMIs provided to be used by us. So you can see content management AMIs. There is 446 products. So there is WordPress, there is ghost, there is also MediaWiki, and there is CRM. There is multiple things you can find here. If you are interested, for example, in a specific image for DevOps, you can find them as well here. For web testing, for Java testing suites, also you will find many of those AMI. All you need to do is just to purchase them, because normally all of these are a commercial product. They are not a free product. Now the community AMI, these are people who are shared these AMI with us. And normally these most likely will be free. So you can get, for example, a Windows server with SP3 standard. There is also Windows Server full SQL Enterprise. SQL Server Enterprise already installed in this machine, which means you don't need to create an EC2 instance with Windows Server, and then you go and you install the SQL Server. Now for this demo, I'm going to go back to the quick start and select the first option here, which is Amazon Linux 2 AMI with HVM. So we will select the first one and the sizes, and this is what I said about those sizes. So a T2 micro give you one virtual CPU with one memory. You could go all the way from a T2 in the T2 family all the way to T2 2X large, which is 8 virtual CPU with 32 GB of memory. If you are interested in a memory optimized, you can come to this screen here and you select, for example, I want a machine which is a memory optimized fifth generation, disk optimized and network optimized. How I know? Because it will give me one of SSD instance storage. It is an elastic block storage optimized available, and the network performance can give me up to 25 gigabit per second, and also support IPv6. So this is a quite good machine if I need, or my application, I'm dealing with distributed storage system, I'm running a blockchain validator, and so on. You could also notice that T2 macro, for example, it displays below it a free tier eligible, which means if you run this, if you have a new account in AWS, for the first 12 months, you will run this T2 macro for free. So let me select it. And now in the next step, we are going to configure the instance type. How many instances I need to launch, and whether I want to request a spot instance, and I want that spot instance to be persistent, which means once my spot is outbidded, I want to stop it or hibernate it. And I can specify my bidding price, the maximum price that I can purchase this instance on. Now, depending on the region, so now I am in North Virginia, this price could vary from one region to another. So you need to check the instance spot history in order to know how much price you should bid in. Now, this normally displays the current price, but it's a bit slow, so I'm going to move on now until this comes back. In the networking part, you will select in which VPC, which subnet you want to place this EC2 instance, and also whether you need an auto-assign public IP enable, or you don't want this EC2 to get a public IP, so you disable it. The host name, by default, when you launch an EC2 instance, it will get the private IP as the host name. If you want to provide a specific resource name for your host name, you can select it from here. Now, the placement group is going to be described in the next section, but let me just show you what is it. So when you create a placement group, you have three options. The cluster one means that your EC2 instance will be placed close to each other in the same facility, in the same data center. So they will be in the same bisection of the data center. If you choose a spread, they will be spread in the same facility, in the same availability zone, far from each other. So just in case if we lose one part of the data center due to network power cutoff, you still have access to your other EC2 instances in the same availability zone. If you want to keep them separate and far from each other, you could do the partition. And the partition now, you can make sure they are distributed across one or more availability zone. Now, about the capacity reservation, you can have an open to the capacity based on the capacity, but sometimes you don't want it. You want to go and place it in a specific target group, like you create a target group before of three EC2 instances, and now you want to add one more to those group. The IAM role, normally this IAM role, if you want to give your EC2 permission to access another EC2 instance or to access S3 storage. So this instance profile or the EC2 profile will give your EC2 the permission to read or write to another S3, DynamoDB table, or another AWS service. And this is what I said about the shutdown behavior. You can make sure if the user decides to shut down the machine to go to stop state or terminate state. Now, by default, this is in a stop state, so the user could go again and verify he wants to terminate it, which means deleting it, and this will be much better than going all the way to terminate. If you are running this in an dev and test, where a user creates multiple EC2 instances to testing or developing, terminate will be much better option because this will reduce the cost. Now, about hibernate behavior. In hibernation, all the instances, details, and data that we have in the RAM, in the instance RAM, will be saved. So you make sure that the root volume is large enough to store the RAM content and accommodate your expected usage, like session data, OS, application, and so on. So if you want to allow hibernation in your machine, and this is very useful in two scenarios. When you run those EC2 instances behind a load balancer and autoscaler, so the autoscaler will keep terminating those EC2 instances. You don't want to lose the session data between your user and those EC2. You can hibernate them. Or you can, as we will see later on in module 12, where we can have better solution, maybe to put those session data in a DynamoDB table and to make sure that the session data will persist. You could also enable termination protection, which means you will protect your machine from being terminated accidentally or during any AWS maintenance in that region or that availability zone. You could also enable CloudWatch detailed monitoring, which means it's going to give you, for an extra amount of money, it will give you a metrics of about the EC2 instance every 1 minute. The standard CloudWatch monitoring, which is free, will collect the metrics about that EC2 instance every 5 minutes. Now for tenancy, you have three options here. You have shared, which is the default one, where you run your EC2 instance in the same host machine, in top of the same hypervisor, and you will share it with other customers. If you have a data regulation or compliance that you need to meet, you can choose a dedicated instance. And there is two things here. There is the dedicated instance and the dedicated host. Dedicated host, you are going to get access to the number of cores in that host and also the serial port in that host. If you don't want to have access due to the licensing requirements for the number of cores and the serial ports, you can create a dedicated instances. Those dedicated instances will be a virtual machine, but they will be run only and exclusively in your hardware. You could also create an elastic interface for interface accelerator, which can basically improve the performance of your EC2 instances networking communication. Now let me move below to the user data. The user data is the place where you can paste and put a script to launch once the machine is started, whether it is a bash script or a cloud INI directive. So I have a script here, which is yum-y update install HTTPD, system control enable the Apache started, and then I will echo to the directory var www.html/index/html index.html. I will echo a small statement, hello world, from your web server. As complicated as it looks, all I need to do is just to make sure that I tell my user data that this is a bin and batch script. It's a bash script, so we can use it as a bash script with a Linux machine. In the next step now, I want to add storage. As you can see here, I'm using an elastic block storage volume, and we studied this before. So this is a general purpose SSD, and we have a general purpose SSD 3. It's a new family as well. And we have a provisioned IOPS, which means it can give us a better input-output operation per second. We have the IO1 and the IO2, and this is the magnetic standard. You could also add a new volume, and you can decide whether you want a magnetic elastic block storage volume, or you want to choose an ephemeral instance store one, or a cold storage as well. Now you remember here that you only can use SSD drive as a boot volume, because this is the boot volume where the operating system will be stored. Add tags, and it's very important to tag your resources that you create, even for dev or test, because this will keep you aware about the cost, and you can explore the cost based on these tags, and you can track them as well. So let me call this demo. And I will click now in configuring a security group. In configuring a security group, you can select an existing one, and this is basically the default security group that comes with that VPC. Don't ever use it, don't ever change it, because this will change the whole thing. And most importantly, make sure you all the time create a VPC and launch your resources inside your virtual private cloud, not in the default VPC. The default VPC is more useful if you want to do experiment testing, just to try a few things. It is okay. But for a professional production ready workload, you better run and launch your resources inside your personal, your private, virtual private cloud. So I'm going to create a security group. I will call this web security group, because here I need to open a HTTP port. So I can select HTTP. I don't need SSH to access this machine. I don't think I need it. So I'm going to review and launch. And this will ask me now to create a new key pair. And remember, if you create a key pair with RSA, that key pair will be like demo, will be downloaded to your download folder, demo. Even if you don't need to use a PIM file, you can download the ED25519. Let me call this demo 1 and download. And this is demo1.pim file. Most likely use the RSA, which is the key pair type. Now this key pair, demo itself, not demo 1, this key pair, guys, will be splitted into two keys. The private key, which is the one I just download in my machine, The private one, demo.pem, is the private key, and there is another key, the public key, which will be uploaded to that EC2 instance. Every time I want to access it via SSH or remote Windows desktop, it will match my private key to that public key. If there is a match, I will be granted the access. If there is no match, I will be declined the access. So if you select the demo virtual machine here, you can see it will display all the information I have about the instance ID, the host name, the type, in which VPC, and in which subnet I launch it. Also, whether there is a role specified with this EC2 instance. As you can see now, the EC2 is running, and I'm still waiting for that EC2 to be fully running because I need to see now there is 2 status check ready to be viewed for that machine. You could attach to this EC2 instance what we call an elastic IP. The elastic IP, you can go to the elastic, allocate a new one, and this will create a static public IP address that you can allocate and associate to any EC2 instance running in your AWS Management Console in the same region. The good thing about those elastic IP, I can take them from this machine and I could assign them and basically use them with another machine. Maybe this elastic IP is used by my application source code. It was hard-coded inside the source code, so I could basically move it from one EC2 to another. Now, if you go now to this public IP address and you want to access the public IP address, you will see the message from the EC2 instance, which is hello, the hello message. And this is pretty much all the options that we need to think and to configure when we want to launch an EC2 instance. Thank you.